I'm Sarah, and it all started when I met Tom in college. We were in different courses, but we hit it off right away. He was charming, funny, and damn good looking. We dated throughout college, and by the time graduation rolled around, we were head over heels in love. We got hitched right after graduation, and I was on cloud nine. My parents, Ellen and George, were loaded. They'd always given me everything I wanted, and my wedding was no exception. It was a fairy tale affair, white dress, fancy venue, the works. The first year of marriage was bliss. We were young, in love, and had the world at our feet. Tom had landed a great job at a marketing firm, and I was working as a teacher at a local elementary school. Life was good. Then, about a year after we got married, I found out I was pregnant. I was over the moon. His reaction wasn't quite what I expected. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I brushed off his lukewarm response, chalking it up to shock. I was sure he'd come around once the news sank in. 9 months later, our daughter Lily was born. She was perfect, 10 tiny fingers, 10 tiny toes, and a set of lungs that could wake the dead. I was smitten. Tom, on the other hand, seemed overwhelmed. He'd hold Lily awkwardly, like she was a ticking time bomb. When she cried, which was often, he'd practically run from the room. "I thought we'd have more time, he said one night, after Lily had finally fallen asleep. To enjoy being married, travel, all that stuff." I tried to reassure him. "We can still do all that, Tom. It'll just be a little different with Lily." As the months went by, Tom started staying late at work more and more often. He'd come home after Lily was asleep, citing big projects and demanding clients. I wanted to believe him, but a nagging doubt started to grow in the pit of my stomach. Friday nights became guys' night for Tom. He'd go out with his work buddies, coming home in the wee hours of the morning, reeking of booze. "Keep that kid quiet, will you?" he'd snap when Lily's cries woke him up. "Some of us need to sleep." 3 years flew by in a blur of diapers, tantrums, and stolen moments of joy. Lily was now 3, a bundle of energy with her dad's green eyes and my stubborn chin. I'd gone back to work, and Lily had started kindergarten. We'd fallen into a routine, but it felt like Tom and I were just going through the motions. Then came the day that shattered what was left of our marriage. "I've got a business trip next week," Tom announced over dinner one night. "I'll be gone for 3 days." I nodded, used to his frequent trips by now. The day after Tom left, I got a frantic call from his mother, Martha. "Sarah, I'm at the hospital," she said, her voice shaky. "I had some chest pains. Could you let Tom know?" My heart raced. "Of course, Martha. I'll call him right away." But Tom wasn't answering his phone. After trying for hours, I started to worry. What if something had happened to him too? In desperation, I called his boss, Mike. Business trip. Mike sounded confused. I didn't send Tom on any trip. My world tilted on its axis. If Tom wasn't on a business trip, where the hell was he? When he waltzed through the door 3 days later, whistling like he didn't have a care in the world, I was ready. "How was your trip?" I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Your mom's in the hospital, and your boss says he never sent you anywhere." The color drained from Tom's face. "Sarah, I can explain." "Save it," I spat. "Just tell me the truth for once. Are you cheating on me?" The silence that followed was all the answer I needed. "Her name's Amanda," Tom finally mumbled. "It's been going on for a while now." The divorce was ugly. Tom fought me on everything: the house, the car, even Lily's teddy bear, but the worst was when he refused to pay child support. "I'm not paying for a kid I never wanted," he snarled during one of our meetings. Something in me snapped. "Fine," I said, my voice cold. "Keep your money. But I want you to sign away your parental rights. You clearly don't want to be a father, so make it official." To my shock, Tom didn't even hesitate. He signed the papers with a flourish, and just like that, he was out of our lives. The next 2 years were tough. Tom's parents, bless them, helped out with Lily and gave us money when they could, but being a single mom was harder than I'd ever imagined. Then, when Lily was 5, I met Jack. He was a widower with a daughter, Emma, who was a year younger than Lily. We bonded over playground meetups and PTA meetings, and before I knew it, I was falling in love again. We got married in a small ceremony, with Lily and Emma as our flower girls. Watching Jack with the girls, I felt hope blooming in my chest for the first time in years. As time passed, our little family grew closer. Lily started calling Jack Dad and Emma called me Mom. It felt right, like we were always meant to be together. 3 years after we got married, our son Max was born. Jack doted on all 3 kids equally, never distinguishing between his and mine. We were happy, really and truly happy. 20 years. Sometimes it feels like yesterday that Lily was a toddler, tottering around our living room. Now, at 25, she's a college graduate, engaged and planning her own wedding. Where did the time go? Lily's fiancé is a great guy. Jack and I both like him. He's kind, hardworking, and he clearly adores our daughter. When they announced their engagement, Jack opened a special account for Lily's wedding expenses and gave her full access. When we told Lily, she burst into tears and hugged us both. For weeks after that, our house was a flurry of wedding magazines, color swatches, and excited phone calls. Lily would burst through the door, bubbling over with news about venues, dresses, and floral arrangements. "Mom, Dad, you won't believe what we found," she'd exclaim, spreading photos across our kitchen table. "Isn't this centerpiece gorgeous?" Jack and I would nod and smile, caught up in her enthusiasm. It warmed my heart to see her so happy, to be part of this exciting time in her life. But then, things started to change. The visits became less frequent, the phone calls shorter. At first I chalked it up to wedding stress. Planning a wedding is no small feat, after all, but as the weeks went by I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Then, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, Lily showed up unannounced. The moment I saw her face, I knew something was wrong. Her usual bright smile was gone, replaced by a tense, almost nervous expression. "Mom, I need to talk to you and..." "Jack," she said, stumbling over the name. My heart dropped. Jack, not Dad. In all the years since Jack had come into our lives, I'd never heard Lily call him anything but Dad. "Of course, sweetheart," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Let me get Jack." I found my husband in the garage tinkering with his latest project. One look at my face and he was on his feet, wiping his hands on a rag. "What's wrong?" he asked, concern etching his features. "It's Lily," I replied. "She wants to talk to us." "And Jack. She called you Jack." I saw the hurt flash across his face before he schooled his expression into calm neutrality. He nodded, took my hand, and together we walked back into the house. Lily was sitting at the kitchen table, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Jack and I sat down across from her, our hands still linked under the table. The tension in the room was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. "All right, Lily," Jack said, his voice gentle despite the worry I could see in his eyes. "We're here. What did you want to talk about?" Lily took a deep breath, her eyes darting between Jack and me. "I met my biological father a couple of months ago. I was at Grandma Martha's and he showed up. We talked for hours. He's changed, Mom. He wants to make things right." I felt Jack stiffen beside me. "And what does this have to do with the wedding?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. Lily's chin lifted, a stubborn set to her jaw that I recognized all too well. "He asked to walk me down the aisle, and I want him to." The silence that followed was deafening. I could practically hear the sound of Jack's heart breaking. "Lily," I said gently, "sweetheart, I know this is confusing. But Jack has been your dad since you were 5. Tom, he abandoned you. He signed away his rights." "He made a mistake," Lily's voice rose. "He's sorry now. He wants to fix things." Jack leaned forward, his face a mask of hurt and confusion. "Lily, I've raised you as my own for 20 years. I've been there for every scraped knee, every school play, every heartbreak. I thought I was your dad." "You are," Lily insisted, then faltered. "I mean, you're my stepdad and I love you. But Tom is my real father. It's my wedding, and I want him to walk me down the aisle." I saw the moment Jack's heart shattered. His face crumpled for a split second before he regained control. "Lily," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I've always considered you my daughter. Not my stepdaughter. My daughter." "Well, I'm not," Lily shouted, jumping to her feet. You're my stepfather, not my real dad. This is my wedding, and I'll decide who walks me down the aisle." The front door slammed and Emma, Jack's biological daughter, rushed into the kitchen. "What's going on? Why is everyone yelling?" Close behind her was Max, our son, looking bewildered. "Mom? Dad? Lily?" I quickly filled them in, watching their faces change from confusion to anger. "How could you do this to Dad?" Emma demanded, glaring at Lily. "After everything he's done for you." Max nodded, his young face twisted with hurt. "Yeah, Lily. Dad's always treated us all the same. How can you say he's not your real dad?" Lily looked around wildly, her eyes filling with tears. "You don't understand. None of you understand." With that, she bolted from the house, the door slamming behind her. We all stood there in stunned silence. Jack's face was ashen, his eyes fixed on the spot where Lily had been standing. Emma moved to his side, wrapping an arm around him. Max joined them, and I watched as my family closed ranks around Jack. I moved to Jack's other side, taking his hand. He looked at me, his eyes swimming with unshed tears. "I don't understand," he whispered. "Where did I go wrong?" My heart broke for him. "For all of us. You didn't go wrong, Jack," I said firmly. "You've been the best father any of these kids could ask for. Lily's, I don't know what's gotten into her." As we stood there, our little family huddled together in the kitchen, I couldn't help but wonder how had things gone so wrong, and more importantly, how were we going to fix this? The days following Lily's bombshell announcement were tense. Jack and I kept expecting her to call, to apologize, to come to her senses. But the call never came. Instead, my phone started buzzing with notifications. Friends and family members sending me links, asking if I'd seen Lily's latest posts. With a heavy heart, I opened her social media page. There they were. Photos of Lily with Tom, both grinning at the camera. "So happy to reconnect with my real dad," the caption read. Each word felt like a knife twisting in my gut. When I showed Jack, his face hardened. "That's it," he said, his voice low and controlled. "If she doesn't consider me her father anymore, I'm not paying for her wedding. I'm blocking her access to the wedding account. She's made her choice." I didn't argue. How could I when he looked so broken? A few days later, the other shoe dropped. Lily burst into our house like a hurricane, her face red with fury. "What the hell?" she screamed, not even bothering with a greeting. "Why can't I access the wedding account? How am I supposed to pay the vendors? The venue? The caterers?" "I'm sure your real father can help you out," Jack replied, his voice cold in a way I'd never heard before. "Since you've chosen him, it seems only right that he should foot the bill." Lily gaped at him, then turned to me. "Mom, you can't let him do this. Make him give me access to the account again." I shook my head slowly. "Lily, this is Jack's decision. And frankly, I agree with him." "What?" she shrieked. "How can you take his side? I'm your daughter." "And Jack is my husband," I replied firmly. "He's been more of a father to you than Tom ever was. You can't expect to hurt him like this and still have him pay for your wedding." Lily's face contorted with rage. "Fine," she spat. "If that's how it's going to be, then you need to make a choice, Mom. It's me or him. Your daughter or your husband. Choose." She stood there, chest heaving, clearly expecting me to cave. To choose her, my flesh and blood, over Jack. But in that moment, looking at her tantrum-throwing face, I didn't recognize my daughter at all. "I'm not choosing anyone, Lily," I said quietly. "I love you and I love Jack. But I agree with his decision. You're an adult now. If you want Tom to be your real father, then you need to deal with the consequences of that choice." Lily's face crumpled. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the little girl she used to be, the one who would run to Jack with skinned knees and bad dreams. Then her expression hardened again. "I hate you," she sobbed. "I hate both of you." And with that, she stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. A few days after Lily's dramatic exit, my phone buzzed again. Another social media notification. With a sense of dread, I opened it. There was Lily, beaming next to Tom. The caption read, "Thanks to my amazing dad for funding my dream wedding." It's going to be the event of the century. P.S. Sarah, Jack, and kids don't bother showing up. You're not invited. I showed Jack, who just shook his head sadly. Where did Tom suddenly get all this money, he wondered aloud. I shrugged. Who knows, maybe he won the lottery. Either way, it's not our problem anymore. We tried to put it out of our minds to focus on our life and our other kids. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. A week later, there was a knock at our door. I opened it to find Martha and George, Tom's parents, looking worried and frazzled. Sarah, dear Martha said, wringing her hands, we need your help. I ushered them in, calling for Jack. Once we were all settled in the living room, George spoke up. We got a call from the bank, he explained. They're saying we've missed a loan payment. But we never took out a loan. The next day I found myself at the bank with Martha and George, piecing together a disturbing puzzle. Tom, it turned out, had taken out a massive loan using forged documents. He'd made his parents unwitting co-signers. I'm so sorry, the bank manager said, looking genuinely distressed. But unless the loan is repaid, we'll have to start proceedings against Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. Martha burst into tears. George looked shell-shocked. We'll figure this out, I assured them, even as my mind raced. How could Tom do this to his own parents? Back at home, I filled Jack in on everything. He listened, his face growing grimmer by the second. We need to call the police, he said finally. Tom's committed fraud. His parents shouldn't suffer for his crimes. I nodded, my heart heavy. Despite everything, I never wanted it to come to this. The next few days were a whirlwind. Police statements, bank meetings, more tears from Martha and George, and then, finally, the news we'd been dreading and hoping for in equal measure: Tom had been arrested. As the details emerged, the full scope of Tom's deception became clear. He'd taken out the loan not just for Lily's wedding, but to impress a new girlfriend. He'd been living large on borrowed money and forged signatures. The funds have been frozen, the detective informed us. We'll be seizing them as evidence. My thoughts immediately went to Lily. All that money she'd been bragging about, the lavish wedding she'd been planning, it was all gone. Fruits of a poison tree. That evening, as Jack and I sat on the porch, trying to process everything that had happened, my phone rang. It was Lily. Mom, she sobbed, her voice cracking. Everything's ruined. The money's gone. The wedding's off. What am I going to do? I closed my eyes, feeling a complex mix of emotions: sympathy, frustration, a tiny bit of vindication. But mostly I felt tired, so very tired. I don't know, Lily, I said softly. I really don't know. A few days after the phone call, Lily showed up at our doorstep. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hair disheveled. She looked nothing like the radiant bride-to-be she'd been just weeks ago. Mom, Dad, she said, her voice small. I noticed she was calling Jack Dad again. I need your help. We invited her in, sitting around the kitchen table where we'd had so many family discussions before. Jack's face was a mask of calm, but I could see the turmoil in his eyes. The wedding's off unless we can find the money, Lily explained, her words tumbling out. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But please, can you help me? Can you give me the money for the wedding? I glanced at Jack. His jaw was set, but I could see the conflict in his eyes. Part of him wanted to sweep in and fix everything, like he always had. But we both knew we couldn't do that this time. Lily, I said gently, we can't just give you the money. Not after everything that's happened. But Lily started to protest, but Jack cut her off. We can't forgive you that quickly, he said, his voice firm but not unkind. Actions have consequences, Lily. You made your choice, and now you have to deal with the fallout. Lily's face crumpled. You don't understand, she sobbed. Ben is furious. He says I'm unstable, that I create drama. He's threatening to call off the engagement if we can't have the wedding we planned. My heart ached for her. Despite everything, she was still my little girl. I wanted to wrap her in my arms and make everything better, but I knew we couldn't. Sweetheart, I said, reaching out to take her hand. I'm so sorry you're going through this. But this is a problem you created, and it's one you need to solve yourself. "We love you," Jack added, his voice thick with emotion. "But we can't bail you out of this. It wouldn't be right, and it wouldn't help you in the long run." Lily looked between us, realization dawning in her eyes. We weren't going to cave. We weren't going to fix this for her. "Fine," she spat, yanking her hand away from mine. "I'll figure it out myself. I don't need you. Either of you." She stormed out, leaving Jack and me sitting in stunned silence. Weeks passed. We heard through the grapevine that Lily and Ben had gotten married at the city hall, with just a handful of guests present. We weren't invited. The night we heard about the wedding, I found Jack sitting on the porch, staring into the distance. "I feel like I failed her," he said quietly as I sat down next to him. I took his hand, squeezing it gently. "You didn't fail her, Jack. We raised her to be strong, independent, and responsible. Sometimes that means letting her face the consequences of her actions." "But what if we pushed her away for good?" he asked, his voice breaking. I leaned my head on his shoulder. "Every person in life faces situations where they have to make a choice," I said softly. "Sometimes those choices turn out to be wrong. That's what happened with Lily. But she's strong. She'll learn from this, and hopefully she'll find her way back to us." We sat there in silence, watching the sun set. Our family had been through a storm, and I knew we weren't out of the woods yet. But as I sat there with Jack, I felt a glimmer of hope. We'd weathered storms before. We'd weather this one too. 3 months after Lily's hasty City Hall wedding, I bumped into an old friend at the grocery store. As we caught up, she let slip something that made my heart skip a beat. "I heard Lily and Ben are having trouble," she said, lowering her voice. "Someone told me they're talking about divorce." I thanked her, my mind reeling. As soon as I got home, I filled Jack in. We debated for hours before finally deciding to reach out to Lily. To our surprise, she answered on the first ring. "Mom," her voice was small, reminding me of when she was little and had a nightmare. "Sweetheart," we heard. "Is everything okay?" There was a long pause, then a choked sob. "No, Mom. Nothing's okay." Jack and I invited her and Ben over. The next evening they sat across from us at the kitchen table, looking worn and defeated. "We can't stop fighting," Lily admitted, her eyes downcast. "Ben resents me for the wedding fiasco, for alienating all of you. His parents are furious that they weren't at the wedding." Ben nodded, looking miserable. "I love Lily, but I don't know if love is enough anymore." I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "Marriage isn't easy," I started. "God knows Jack and I have had our rough patches. But divorce, that's a big step. Are you sure you've tried everything?" Lily burst into tears. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "For everything. Dad, Jack, I'm so sorry for what I said, for how I treated you. Mom, I'm sorry for trying to make you choose. I've ruined everything." Jack reached across the table, taking Lily's hand. "You haven't ruined everything, sweetheart. You made mistakes, yes, but we all do. Have you considered seeing a family therapist?" To our relief, they both nodded. We spent the rest of the evening talking, really talking, for the first time in months. There were more tears, but also laughter, and by the time Lily and Ben left, I felt a glimmer of hope. Over the next few months, Lily and Ben threw themselves into therapy. Jack and I even joined them for a session at the therapist's request. It was hard, dredging up old hurts and misunderstandings, but it was also healing. Slowly but surely we saw changes. Lily and Ben started looking at each other the way they used to. Family dinners became a regular thing again, filled with conversation and laughter instead of tension. One evening, as Jack and I sat on the porch watching the sunset, Lily joined us. She snuggled up next to Jack like she used to when she was little. "Dad," she said softly, "I'm so sorry for everything. You've always been my real dad, and I was an idiot to ever say otherwise." Jack hugged her tight, his eyes misty. "I love you, kiddo. Always have, always will." As for Tom, we heard through Martha and George that he'd received a suspended sentence for the fraud. Last we knew, he'd left town, hopefully to start fresh somewhere else. Life isn't perfect. Lily and Ben still have their struggles and our family is still healing. But as I sit here watching Jack and Lily chatting and laughing, I feel hopeful. We've weathered this storm, and I believe we've come out stronger for it. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know this family isn't about blood or legal documents. It's about love, forgiveness, and sticking together even when things get tough. And by that definition, we are most definitely a family.